What's up, guys? Four-wheeler doctor back again. Today we're going to be tearing down a motor. Little 250 Recon. This is an early 2000 model. I guess probably a 2002, 2001, maybe something like that. This is the same setup, same motor that comes in the later models, the 2005, 2006. So it still pertains to this. I'm going to do a real quick tear down. This one's run under the water, smoking like a freight train. So I'm going to tear it down, get me a little parts list together, and show you guys how to do it pretty quickly. This is the electric shift model. You see the shift motor on the front. I'm going to probably start out taking the top end off. All these head bolts out. And you don't have to take these two out. They actually hold the cam sliders in. So just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bolts. I usually go ahead and loosen up these valve covers while I got it off. Maybe take them completely off. Those are 17 millimeter, and that'll expose the rocker arms and all that. So we'll pull them off. Probably go ahead and get this top end down, then we'll flip it around, do either the front or the back side. I ain't really decided yet which one we're going to do first, but all right. Let me get that top end off, cut the camera back on. Alright guys, got all the bolts out of here. This cover just comes right off. It's got a metal reusable gasket on there. You want to make sure you keep up with that. Everything looks good in there. And you also have your push rods. I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but I like to mark these to tell where they come from. For instance, this is the front one. It's on the exhaust side of the motor. Exhaust push rod. So mark a F on there. Throw it in the box. Mark a R on this one. And normally I would set this motor at top dead center, but in this case I really don't care. I'm not going to do just the top end on it, so I don't have to worry about getting top dead center and all that. So I'm just gonna tear it all down so it doesn't matter whether it's top dead or not. Alright, so the next things we need to take off, there's two 10 millimeter bolts on the back side here, and then these four 14 millimeter nuts that hold the actual head on. So we pop them off. Probably going to use the air impact on those, make it come off a little easier. Cut the camera back on when I get them unbolted. As I told you wrong on these nuts holding these the head on, these are actually 12 millimeters. The bigger bikes use a 14. And these also have a washer. Make sure you'll keep up with that. All the nuts are the same and all the washers are the same. So I just usually throw them in a bag together. Getting those washers off can be a little tough from time to time because of the oil suction them down. Alright, so just pry your washer up. And got your two 10 millimeter bolts off the back side. And then your head should come up, separates right here. These things also have some dowel pins. You might want to make sure you keep up with those dowels because they tend to fall out and then you lose them on the ground somewhere. You can tell that's been burning some oil a pretty good bit, so I'll clean up all that and get ready to put it back together. Probably going to do a set of valve seals in this one too. There again, this is a head gasket, just like the valve cover or the rocker arm gasket. Some metal gaskets reusable. I usually coat them with a little bit of copper seal when I go to put them back together. Throw that in the bag. And then the only other thing left is the cylinder. I'll rotate this thing around to get it at least to the top. And your piston's looking got a little wear in it. It's got a little wobble from side to side. Biggest thing I want to check here is to make sure that the crank doesn't have any play in it. Get a little bit bigger screwdriver. I understand this is not the ideal way to do this, but it's just kind of an easier way to, you don't want to break any of these fins off. So that's what helps in the cooling of the motor. That thing's stuck on there pretty good. So let me grab a rubber hammer. See if I can tap it off there. It's on there pretty good. Usually they're not stuck down that tight. I want it to come up. I'm not getting any movement in the bottom over there. It does have a gasket on it. Sometimes they can get stuck. Not normally the there it goes. Just stuck on there a little bit. Alright, so there you go. There's the cylinder. I'm already planning on just having this one bored, or either buying one of those cylinder kits for it. It really don't have that much of a lip. Pretty much anything you can feel in the cylinder can make it smoke. I'm pretty sure it can run under the water a time or two. But the good news is there's no play up and down in the crankshaft. So this guy's gonna get out of not having to replace that. Just pull straight up and down on it. Doesn't have any play in it, so that's good. Probably just a matter of the rings being tore up in this thing. It had a snorkel on it. I can only imagine the abuse it's been through. But the ring gap's supposed to be like 6/1000ths, and you can see there we got a 1/16 of an inch or so. So the rings are shot. Just because I don't know the past of this bike, sometimes you can do the rings in one, you can bore them out and all that. Thing's got mud in the bottom end, it'll start back smoking on you. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes a while, but you're just circulating all that crud. Doesn't matter how clean your oil is, there still can be a good bit of crud build up in the bottom end if it's been run under the water. So that's why I'm gonna go ahead and tear it down. It ain't really a whole lot more to tear down, so I can at least get the inside cleaned out. Alright, so what I'm probably going to do first is I'm going to tear this back end apart first. First order of business is going to be to pop this timing cover off. Just open that up just so it's loose, and unbolt the starter. There's two 10mm bolts on the starter and the pull start. Three 8mm bolts on it. So let me get those two off and I'll cut the camera back on. Alright guys, now you want to take the pull start gear or whatever you want to call that off. It's a 14mm. You can just kind of hold it with your hand, spin it off there, and it just wobbles right off. Throw that in the bag. To get that starter off, just stick a screwdriver between the face of the starter and the case and pry out on it a little bit. It's got a O-ring in there that'll hold it, and it should come off, maybe with a little bit smaller screwdriver. Like I say, it should come off eventually without breaking the screwdriver. It's too late for that. There it goes. Just try to kind of get it to slide out of there kind of square. You get it kind of cocked sideways, it really won't come out. Which it ain't really coming out real easy right now, but it did come out. Alright, there you go. O-ring on that. This thing just spin pretty freely, so good. Now this bike would crank up and run. It was just, like I said before, smoking like a freight train. Alright, so the next thing we're going to take off is this back cover here. It's got a right good many bolts in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like about 11 bolts around here. Also, while I'm here working with it, I'm gonna go ahead and take this boot off too. It's gonna be in the way eventually. So it's just a Phillips head screw to get that clamp off. Let me I'll cut the camera back on when I get it all the bolts out and get ready to knock it apart. Alright guys, got all the bolts out there. You can just take a little hammer and tap on this little tab right here. Make it break loose. You get some resistance here from the stator being magnetized. So just wiggle it around and it'll come out of there. And there you go. This actually pulled out the starter gear too, as well as this little shaft. This shaft goes on a gear here with a washer on it. Want to keep up with those so you don't forget them when you go to put the thing back together. Also tore the gasket on there, so we're definitely going to need a gasket, which they tend to tear a lot of times. So, alright, so there's your starter gear. Wiggle that off there. Probably stick that in a bag together. Doesn't appear to be any kind of washers or anything else on here. Sometimes there's a washer on the reverse shaft, but on this Recon there isn't. So, alright, got that off. Now we'll look at pulling the flywheel off. I will cut the camera back on in a sec when I figure out what puller I need. Alright guys, get ready to pull this flywheel off. Most of these Hondas use a little bit bigger flywheel puller. Maybe, shoot, I don't know how big that is. Pretty good size, 18 or something millimeter. But it won't fit in this one. Actually, that's a small one. So I bought this little kit online off eBay. Comes with a bunch of pullers, and actually it's got one in here that'll fit in here just perfect. And what it is a 14 by 1.5. You might be able to just get you a bolt, stick in there if you don't do this every day like I do, to thread in. And what you do is you just tighten that up in there, and it bottoms out on the end of the crankshaft. And then I usually just hit it with the impact, just like everything else on this thing is tight. So I'm gonna hit it and hopefully I can get it to pop off of here, just like that. Alright, so it comes off along with that back gear here. Need to get all that off at one time. Make sure your one-way bearing don't fall out of there. You got to kind of, with that one-way bearing, you got to kind of twist it to get it back together. Then there's a needle bearing, and then your keyway is pretty much stuck in there, so I can't get it out. I'm just going to let it go. I'll probably stick a zip tie around these just to hold it all together. But that's done. The only other thing you can take off back here, the shifter lever is still stuck up in there, but we can't take it off until we get the front end apart. Is that the next thing you can take off is that reverse lever. The easiest thing to do with it is take a pair of needle nose, grab it right here and twist it, and wiggle it as you twist it, and it will slide off of there just like that with the spring and all. And stick that in a bag, and then we'll flip it around to the front. I'm pretty sure that, well, that shaft done fell off there. It will come out. The shift shaft, you can go ahead and slide it out. It's got a washer on it. You want to make sure you don't want to lose it. I usually stick it in with the transmission part, so I don't know what I'll do with it this time, but at least got it out. Alright, now we're going to flip it around to the other side, and start taking apart the clutches and all that in the front. I'll cut the camera back on when I get it turned around. Alright guys, got it turned around here. Like I said before, this is electric shift model, so it does have the shift motor here on the front. We already took a couple bolts out of it. That's where that cover was on it. If you don't have an electric shift, you can skip forward on this, but to take the remaining pieces out of here, it's just 2 more bolts right here by the shift motor. Take those 2 out, 10mm bolts. Stick them in your cardboard. You can make your piece of cardboard like this. I got one for about every 4-wheeler I've ever worked on, and I save them because you never know when another one's coming in. And it makes it very easy to take apart and put back together. So, wiggle the shift motor off. A little bit of mud fell down in there. We'll get all that cleaned out. It seems to work fine. We'll get another Ziploc bag to put these gears in. Got this little half moon arm type thing, real small gear, and then a little bit bigger gear in the center. Alright, so that's all done. Doesn't appear to have been leaking any. There's a seal right here, and sometimes oil will get in here and just fill this whole cavity up with oil. It's not leaking, so we won't look at replacing that seal. But now the next thing to do is take all these bolts off of this front cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I believe, if I counted right. So I'm going to pull them off. I'll cut the camera back on right before I take the cover off. Alright guys, got the cover off. Now I need to tap it off. I can about bet you it's going to be about stuck on there, considering the way everything else on this bike has been stuck. It's got a little pry tab here. It usually does go on the back side of it. Tap it, screwdriver with a hammer. Sometimes that'll work. Like my daddy used to say, don't force it, get a bigger hammer. So, this ain't much bigger, but it's bigger. There you go. Alright, just pull that off there kind of square. Got a funny shaped gasket on it here. It always gets caught on the back side of that clutch. This motor actually is not in real bad shape. I was talking about cleaning it out because there might be mud in the bottom end. It looks like just mostly crud. It ain't got any actual mud in there, so that's a good thing. Won't have to clean it out quite as much. But this gasket actually is still good. I may end up reusing that. So alright, now we got the clutches here. We already slid this shaft out of this little arm here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull all those pieces out and make sure I stick them where I can find them. So first thing comes off this little triangle shaped thing with 3 balls on it. Then this little funny looking arm. This other little thing that the 3-ball thing sat on. This cover inside of this the change clutch. I'll have to pry that out of there a little bit. Right there. It comes with a bearing and the little holder. Not sure how much of this stuff I'm gonna be able to pull off. There's this washer fell down in there. 2 washers fell down in there. 3rd washer. And I can probably unclip this little spring here to get this other piece to slide off of that arm, and then it's ready to remove that center 10mm bolt. I don't know if I can get that off. Everything in here, oh yeah, I can. Sometimes that thing can be on there pretty tight. They actually recommend putting Loctite on them. I have had those back off before. And then this star shaped piece, it wiggles off of the shift drum. And sometimes that dowel comes out of there. Yep, get that out just so you don't lose it. There you go, that's all your shifter stuff in there, 1 bag. And throw that in the box. Now we're going to start taking these clutches off. This is a centrifugal clutch. This is actually what filters the oil in these things. When you do a oil change, you're actually supposed to take this front cover off and take this off and clean that out, and nobody ever does that. So a lot of times it's pretty cruddy in there. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off and we'll see what it looks like. I'll cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright, I got the little cover unbolted. Kind of stuck on there a little bit. Take a hammer and a screwdriver and twist it around some, get to where you can get it off. And there you go. That's the crud that you get inside of these things. See there, that's a little bit of mud, a little bit of red looking stuff. I'm not sure what that is, but it's pretty cruddy in there. Definitely want to clean that out before you put it all back together. But this is the type of crud that's been circulating around inside of that motor. And we're going to get that all cleaned out so this fellow won't have any more problems with it, as long as he can keep it above the water. Alright, so got that kind of halfway cleaned up. Now we got to take these two nuts off. Nut in here and a nut in here. Both of those are staked. I usually just hit them with the impact and it'll pull them off. So I'm going to do that real quick. See if I can get them off. Alright guys, got the nuts off there. This here is a 22mm on the change clutch. This is a 24mm. Got to use a deep well on this, and this is reverse thread, so righty loosey, lefty tighty to get that off. I don't have a puller per se for these change clutch. For the centrifugal clutches, they're usually pretty easy to get off. Not like pressed on or anything. So all I ever use is just a big 2-jaw puller. So you don't have a whole lot of tension on these things normally. And my puller is actually warped up a little bit. That you can, a lot of times you can tighten it up with your hand and rock it to the side, and it will pull the clutch off. But it's not happening in this case. There again, it's tight, just like everything else is on this one. So hit it with the impact real easy. And then I'm not real sure I got the nut all the way loose, but at least the clutch is loose. That's just on the centrifugal clutch. The change clutch will slip right off once you get the nut loosened up on it. And the change clutch will too. Also in this case, the clutch housing has a little notch in it right there that allows it to slip off, lets that gear slip. See that notch in that right there? So make sure you turn it around like that or it'll pull the whole clutch apart just like I did. Let me stick a zip tie through here, and then like I said on this change clutch, it'll just lift right off. It has a little sleeve in the back of it, and make sure that stays in there with it. No washers or anything behind it. There are washers behind each of these nuts on those clutches, so make sure you keep up with those. And I usually just stick a zip tie on them like this, just to hold everything together. Put it in the box of parts. Alright, so now we're down to what some people call the nitty gritty. This is the oil pump chain and the cam chain. See that cam chain? It's got a little bit of slack in it, a whole lot of slack in it. Actually, normally these chains are pretty close to being straight on both sides, but this one's extended out a pretty good way, so I am going to change the cam chain. I will run this thing around and show you how to top dead center, how the top dead center marks line up on this. We didn't have it at top dead center when we took it apart, so I can get it back on there. This is in this case, it's got a stamp on the cam 250 with a little tick mark, and there's a little cast in arrow notch, whatever you want to call it, in the case here, and that's what you line up. That notch with that arrow, that notch with that dot on the 250, and that's top dead center. We'll do that later once we get everything to start put it back together. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is take the tensioner out, just 2 bolts on it, and then that'll let you slide this off, the cam chain, and also let you slide the oil pump chain off. You also have to take that snap ring out to get that gear off, so you can actually slide the oil pump chain off. So I'm going to get those 2 off. I'll cut the camera back on in a sec. Also guys, one other thing you can do to check, see how much life your cam chain still got. I unbolted the tensioner, as you can see here, and you can take the tensioner, it's spring loaded so it's extended all the way out, and put it back where it goes, and the bolt holes almost line up, so that means it's very, very near the end of its life. So we're going to go ahead and change that that cam chain out. Alright, so I've got that off. I don't know if I have to take this arm off or not. I'm probably going to try to leave it on. I will have to get this snap ring off here, and then also remove this 10mm bolt here. It actually is holding on the cam. 10mm bolt here, and you also want to pull out your lifter cups, because once you start pulling the cam out, sometimes these get stuck. So pull both of those out, and let me get this bolt out, this gear off, and the chain off. I'll cut the camera back on right before I pull the cam out. Alright guys, I got the bolt and the little arm out here that holds the cam down. I also got the gear off of the oil pump there. Put all this stuff in a bag, and what you can do is just slide this cam out now. It'll slide out so far, and then the chain gets loose and you can take the whole thing out. Also going to see if I can fish this oil pump chain around this arm here. Keep having to take the arm all the way off, and I don't think that's going to work. Yep, I might take the arm off. So that one bolt there out the arm, got to get it off just to get that oil pump chain off. And it has a washer behind it, as you can see there. So hang on to that. And alright, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to pull that oil pump out too. What I normally do when I rebuild them is rebuild these oil pumps as well. They're just like a gear drive deal. Usually they're very inexpensive. A lot of cases you can replace the whole pump, but I'll have to look in this case and see which route we're going to go, if it's an entire pump deal or if it's just a replace the gears. Alright, got that done. Now alright guys, I'm not sure how much of that last video you caught, but the memory card filled up, so I got a new one in now. I think I was mentioning the oil pump. I'll have to see, might be able to rebuild this, or may just want to go and buy a whole new one. I have to see what the prices are on it, or even rebuilding it is an option. So throw that to the side. The next thing we need to take out is this output shaft cover, I guess you'd call it. 2 10mm bolts. That pops off. There's some nasty mud and stuff in there. So stick that in the cardboard. Now we're going to start taking off these bolts around the outside here for the crankcase. There's a right good many of them. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Looks like 10 bolts to hold that thing in. So we'll stick them in the cardboard. Also push out these motor mount bushings. That'll kind of help you get the thing apart a little easier. Alright, so that's all off this is the back side of the motor. I'm going to flip it around to the front side, and there's usually a few bolts, 3 or 4 bolts in the front of it, and that'll be it to take it apart. So let me flip it around and I'll cut the camera back on. Alright guys, back on the front side of the motor here. See if I can locate all the bolts. There's one here that's caked up with so much mud you can't even see it. So we've got one bolt here just below the left motor mount, one bolt here in the top, and then one more bolt. Where is it at? Right here on the bottom. And that'll be all that's holding that front case together. They're all 10 millimeters. So once you get those out, usually can pick a pry point here somewhere or another and pry this thing apart. Probably not the ideal situation, but what I normally do is stick the thing right there between between the push rod cups and pry it a little. There again, it's not coming apart. So it doesn't have any cutouts. The only pry point I see on this bike is down here on the bottom, right here. And so there's one right there. I might be able to pry up on that pry point against the oil pump bolt. Usually once you get the thing moving, it'll go. So it started coming apart then. Stick a little screwdriver. I don't want to mess up the mating surfaces, so what I normally do is try to stick a screwdriver in where the motor mounts are. You really don't have to worry about the mating surfaces there, it's sealing off any oil or anything like that. So there you go, just kind of work the thing up, kind of keep it square, and that lets it slide off easier. So wiggle it around a little and lift up, and there you go. Inside of your crankcase, motor looks real clean, so that's a good thing. But you never can tell until you get it torn apart as to what you're actually going to look like. It's just better to be safe than sorry, especially when you don't know what the bike's been through. Alright, so now the last item of business is getting this transmission out. I'll cut the camera back on in a sec, but I'm going to go get me a little box to put it in with a rag in there to keep everything together. Alright guys, here's what we got. First thing you usually try to take off of these is this is a reverse gear. You can slide this shaft out of it and the gear comes off. This gear here is the only one that I see has a washer on it, so you want to make sure you keep up with that. So stick that in your box. Next item, about the easiest thing to get off, is this shaft with the forks on it, shift forks on it. I guess you call that the shift shaft. Sometimes if you get this thing turned around right, you can get it where you can fish those out pretty easily. They're usually marked on there too as to which one goes where. That one's got an F mark for the front. This one should have a C for the center. SK or 8KC it says. And then this one should have an R on it, or a B1. That one's almost out. Well, I'll go ahead and you can lift up on it and slide this whole shift drum out. It just wiggles out. Then you can get that last fork out. It's actually got an R on it for rear. We got an F, a C, and an R. Keep those all together right there on the shaft. And then the last item And the easiest thing to get out of here is, or easiest way to get these out is to pull them out at the same time. Both of these shafts, just kind of grab all the gears with all your fingers, wiggle it around a little, and it'll come out of there. There's your one. The other one just lifted up, it didn't come all the way out, and there's the second one. This shaft here is the only one got a washer on the outside. Stick it in the box. This shaft here had a washer on the bottom side, so stick it in the box. And that's it. We'll remove this piston because we're going to end up replacing it. You can check that thing again, see it doesn't have any up and down play on it, so that's good. We're going to clean all this gasket material off, put some new gaskets in it, and put the thing back together. So I got to get some parts ordered for it first, and then we're going to jump on the next one. I got about 3 other motors in line after this one. Alright guys, appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe. Let me know if you got any questions.